I encourage you to remember to be praying for our search committee and our new pastor. Remember that insert that we gave you a couple weeks ago. So if you do not have that and would like a copy of that, please let the office know and we'll get that to you. But definitely want to remind you of our commitment to the search committee and the search committee's commitment to the church. Would like for you to get your Bible out, if you will. Open it up to Acts chapter 9. We're going to do a little bit of reading. And we have today a look at Saul and his conversion, known as Paul. And this is it's quite a journey that Saul takes. And I want to take a look at that because it's the next part of our sermon series. But there's something very unique about this conversion. And there's some things in there that I think even myself, being a pastor for so long, even was able to be refreshed on, as well as discover some things I didn't quite look at before. So let's start with Acts chapter 9, verse 1. This meanwhile, Saul was breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. He went to the high priest and he asked for letters to the synagogues in Damascus so that if he found any there who believed belonged to the way, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. As he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" "Who are you, Lord?" Saul asked. "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting." He replied, "Now get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do." The men traveling with Saul stood there, speechless. They heard the sound, but did not see anyone. Saul got up from the ground, but when he opened his eyes, he could see nothing. So they led him by the hand to Damascus. For 3 days he was blind and did not eat or drink anything. In Damascus there was a disciple named Ananias. The Lord called to him in a vision. "Ananias." "Yes, Lord," he answered. The Lord told him, "Go to the house of Judas on Straight Street and ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul, for he is praying. In a vision he has seen a man named Ananias come and place his hands on me to restore his sight." Or hands on him to restore his sight. "Lord," Ananias answered, "I have heard many reports about this man and all the harm he has done to your saints in Jerusalem. And he has come here with authority from the chief priest to arrest all who call on your name." But the Lord said to Ananias, "Go. This man is my chosen instrument to carry my name before the Gentiles and their kings and before the people of Israel. I will show him how much he must suffer for my name." Then Ananias went to the house and entered in, placed his hands on Saul, and he said, "Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus, who appeared to you on the road as you were coming here, has sent me so that you may see again, and be filled with the Holy Spirit." Immediately, something like scales fell from Saul's eyes, and he could see again. He got up and was baptized, and after taking some food, he regained his strength. Saul spent several days with the disciples in Damascus. At once he began to preach in the synagogues that Jesus is the Son of God. And all those who heard him were astonished and asked, "Isn't he the man who raised havoc in Jerusalem among those who call on his name? And hasn't he come here to take them as prisoners to the chief priests?" Yet Saul grew more and more powerful and baffled the Jews living in Damascus by proving that Jesus is the Christ. Now, I want to give you, I don't want to call it a history lesson, but I want to give you a little bit of an understanding, kind of a glimpse as to what we're looking at here, because this is pretty significant. Saul is on a journey. He's going from Jerusalem to Damascus, and there's something pretty intense going on here. Because as he's making this journey, there is within him this bitterness for Christians, this bitterness for Jesus Christ. There's a bitterness because Saul has ascribed to Judaism, and that's what his whole life is about. And that is what he is focused on, and that is it. And these Christians have interrupted, and these Christians have left the Judaist faith, or the Jews have left their faith, have gone to Christianity, and now Saul's going, what is going on here? This is our life. This is what we believe. This is what we do. You cannot just lead this for this man named Jesus. And he's on this journey, and I really believe that on this journey there is something on Saul's mind. Saul has just witnessed the murder of Stephen. If you recall, back in chapter 7, he was holding the coats of those that were stoning Stephen. He saw the look on his face. He saw how he was killed. And no matter how you shape it, that is traumatic. That will be ingrained in you. You will not forget that. Those are imageries that you do not just simply go, well, it's another day. That is something that will ride with him as he journeys, because he's already angry with the Christians and the Christian faith at that time considered the way. And he's seething, and he's emotionally upset because he knows in his own heart what he believes is to be followed. But I truly also believe that there's something else that bothers him even deeper. There's a peace about these new believers. There's a peace that he does not understand. There's a peace that he does not have. There's a peace that he's just wanting and longing for, but he's not seeing it. He doesn't know it. And not necessarily does he want it, because he's believing that that is the wrong thing, and it's making him more and more emotionally upset. And so he goes to the Sanhedrin, the kind of the, for a lack of a better way of putting, kind of the police, if you will, of the religious Jews. And he gives permission to go and hunt them down and go as far as Damascus or wherever Jews were, because it didn't matter. The Sanhedrin had control, religious control, over the Jews. And so he is given permission to go wherever Jews may be, acquire them and bring them back to either face persecution or death. And so he's been given this permission. And so he heads on this journey, and he's on the road from Jerusalem to Damascus. And now Damascus is the oldest city in the world. He's on this journey. He leaves Jerusalem. He walks. Now, you guys got to understand this. We walk to our car, and we're disappointed if we park in the far corner. We get to a concert, and we're disturbed that we're so far away. We're in lot D. We want to be in lot A because it's right next to the building. We get upset because, hey, you know what? It's a snowstorm outside, and I've got to walk from my car to Baker's to get my groceries and come back out. And I've got to go through the snow, and I've got to go through the winter. I've got to go through the elements. We get upset because, man, are you kidding me? I don't work outside. I work in an air-conditioned office, but now I've got to go outside and paint my house in the middle of summer. Oh, it's so hot. But the road from Jerusalem to Damascus is 140 miles. And they were not wearing Nikes. They're sandals. Just a flat material with some strapping on it. No cushion, no Air Jordans, no boots. They weren't waterproof. And so this journey is hard. So I want you to understand, get out of this mentality that we're in. They're not cars, no scooters. They're walking on this journey. It takes about a week. Now I did the math, 140 miles a week. Okay, if I give them 7 days, that's 20 miles a day. That's 20 miles a day. When I was working during the prison riot type thing, I realized I walked about 5 miles a day. And I was wiped out. So I can't imagine 20 miles a day out in the elements. So this is what, and what you have is you have the span. You don't have this ability to pull over at, Buc-ee's or the Quick Trip and take a little rest break or anything. So all you you have for 140 miles is your thoughts, your emotions. That man is deadlocked, Damascus, and he is ticked. He wants to collect on the Christians. So are you grasping this? If I pointed the picture, I'm really emphasizing this because it's important. The route to Damascus also went right through Galilee when you leave Jerusalem. You go right up to the mount where Jesus was crucified. And you go right over that and then right into the valley of Damascus. It's a beautiful city. But it's one of some of the fiercest storms are right in that region because the hot air comes up out of the valley and the cool air of the mountains come across and it clashes right there. And you have a lot of good-sized thunderstorms and torrential downpours. Can you imagine being a man that wanted to hunt down Christians, to have them persecuted, put to death, walking through where Jesus has been to get to them? It is just ingraining that bitterness even more and more and more. Now, with all that said, you see where Saul's mentality is and where Saul's emotions are. However, Jesus shows up, right? There's this flash of lightning. Now, you can go different ways. There are those that say, well, that was a lightning storm. Duh. There are others that go, no, Jesus showed up. But in either way we put it, it doesn't matter. I believe Jesus showed up, one way or the other. You want to call it lightning or you want to call it Jesus. It doesn't matter. Jesus showed up. And Saul falls to the ground. Now, you have to understand that Saul sees the light, Saul falls down, and Jesus speaks to him. Now, the gentlemen that are escorting him are not able to be with the Pharisees, in which Saul was. And so they're off in the back a little bit. They're trailing. They could hear the voice, but they didn't see what he saw. And so there's something of significance as well, because this is transpiring. This is about Saul. Not about the guys, it's about him. Jesus is after him. And then when Jesus shows up, Saul's plans radically change. Because see, Saul was all about him and what he wanted to do and what his mission was. It didn't matter what anybody else wanted. And there's nothing in here that says that he prayed before his God, his understanding of God, and that he felt convicted. No, this was about what he wanted. This was his own personal vendetta. And up to this point, he was going to do what he wanted to do because he thought what was best. He was dedicated to Judaism in the deepest way. But when Jesus shows up, it's not going to be Saul walking into the city powerful and taking numbers, if you will. He was led in by his hand, blind and unable to fend for himself. Jesus took him and radically shaped him in a different direction and said, now, you will do what I want you to do. I'm going to take you and I'm going to change you because you are going to do what I want you to do. And so Saul spends 3 days there, and there's something that is definitely taking place because Saul right now is experiencing God's grace and God's mercy. It's in process. Saul's being humbled. For 3 days, he's just sitting there. He's not going anywhere. He's not avenging anything. He's not eating. He's not drinking. Then Ananias comes along. Could you imagine Ananias being him? You're minding your own business, doing what you do. And the Lord calls you and says, hey, I got this sinner down on Straight Street, and I want you to go talk to him. And you go, wait a minute, I've heard about that guy. I don't want to go talk to him. He'll take me back to Jerusalem and I'll be persecuted and put to death. And no, wait a minute. I know this man's reputation. And you know what? I wonder if us Christians are the modern day Ananias. When we listen for God's voice, do we hear it? For some of us, that's a struggle. Sometimes we struggle to understand what listening to God's voice is. And some of us in this room really believe that we can hear God's voice clearly. I have a friend of mine that I truly believe that he spent so much time with God. He turned from a sinful lifestyle and went into his house and literally would not do anything. He didn't work. He didn't go see friends. He didn't go anything. The only thing he did is he went to the grocery store and he went back home. And he did this, ingraining himself into God's Word. He did nothing but read it from front to back. He spent time in prayer and worship. God radically took his life and changed it. And so when we're having conversations that he says, I truly believe that God has spoken to me last night, and I believe this is what he's told me. I stop and I take notice. Because you're telling me from a man who I know has a relationship with God, he has heard God's voice. And I have no doubt he had heard God's voice and believed that he was one of those Christian believers that his faith was so close with God and he knew God's presence. Now, I truly believe that God speaks to us in different ways. I don't believe that Jesus just shows up at our foot of the bed of every certain Christian believer and say, hey, here, I believe in that. I believe that people see him. I believe that people hear him. I believe that people hear him through different things in their lives. I truly believe that comes in different forms. We try to compartmentalize God as to how we're going to hear him. And it's not that simple. God is not just a simple God that we compartmentalize. We go, this is how he is. We try to do it in paintings. We try to do it in ways we describe him. But our songs even sing about God is undescribable. He is that awesome. And so when Ananias hears from him, he is blown away because he's like, you got to understand. I've heard this guy. I've heard about him. He puts our hurting on us. And there's something very, very important because the Lord knows what the Lord's going to do. God tells him to go. And he says that Saul is going to be his chosen instrument. Now, if God shows up and tells me, and most of you know that I work in a prison full time during the day, that I'm going to go and I'm going to speak to a prisoner because he's God's chosen instrument. I think I need my hearing checked. I know I'm hard of hearing. You can laugh. That's okay. But you know what? How much of us in here say, well, hey, you know what? We can go serve in this ministry over at Open Door Mission or New Life or wherever. And we go, no, those people really don't know God. That's a prisoner. That guy's homeless. He doesn't know God. Or, I've heard about homeless people. They take this for our money. This one over here, he's an adulterer. I can't touch that. And when we hear God's voice, it says, serve. We hear God's voice, it says, do something with yourself. Serve me by serving those that are brokenhearted. Serve those who need to hear of me. Do we do the next step that Ananias did? Do we go to Street and actually do it? Because we have to remember, if Ananias didn't do it, things would have changed. Things would have been a lot more different than what they are. But Ananias goes because he's been told that Saul is his chosen instrument for God's work. But, as we see it here, as we know here in life, there are some consequences, right? And I believe that part of some of Saul's consequences was, he said this last part, but Saul will suffer for my name. There are going to be ways that he's going to suffer. And yet God's still glorified in Saul's sufferings. There is something powerful about that city and about the people in it, because what is about to transpire, or what is transpiring, is huge. We're taking a murderer or a persecutor, a person who has made people's lives a complete nightmare for them to fear persecution and even death. And now God's about to change him to be the man who radically changes the early church and becomes one of the people that every one of us in here have opened up the Bible and said, oh man, I wish I was like Paul. Do you? Do you want to be known as a guy who persecuted the early church? Because you can't just take the nice part about him and leave the bad part out, because he was bad. He was bad news. Be careful what you would like to be like. Now, Ananias encounters Saul. Could you imagine that conversation? Can you imagine walking in and standing in the corner and watching Ananias come in and just puts his hand on him? And he doesn't say, Saul, don't kill me. He doesn't say, Saul, don't take me back to Jerusalem. He doesn't say, hey, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I was told by the Lord I have to serve you, so here you go. He says, brother Saul. Saul hasn't been baptized. He doesn't know if Saul actually believes. He's just obeying God, and he walks up and he puts his hands on him. He says, brother Saul. Grace has been extended. Love has been extended. Realizing that, you know what, Saul is as much my brother as anyone else. There is such grace. It's beautiful, because there's an acceptance of a sinner. There's an acceptance of a broken man. When God calls us to accept him. And I really believe that Ananias is the forgotten hero of the faith. Because we talk about how Stephen was stoned to death, how he prayed, and how that radically shaped things, and just really got Paul on this road to Damascus, and how it changed him. But Ananias, I believe, was forgotten about in a lot of ways. He was a huge picture of grace. To give you another example of grace and what I'm after here, because we have to understand this is a ride that Paul was on that I can't even imagine. This is a ride that Ananias became a part of that I can't even imagine. I look back at my own life and I go, man, what a ride that was. I can't imagine what Paul was thinking. But in this a little bit more modern day story, there's an evangelist that comes to America, a British evangelist, and he does what at that time they called a campaign, which is more like an evangelistic gathering. And he asked for the people in the audience to share how maybe this campaign had changed them. And a little girl stood up and she said these words. So through this campaign, I found Christ. He made me able to forgive the man who murdered my father. A little girl. God, when he shows up. And he transforms lives in ways that we cannot explain. In ways that we cannot just easily put a nice little story to it and a nice little spin to it. He radically changes lives. It is not a 360, it's a 180. And it changes, and hopefully changes forever. God makes us able to forgive in the moments that we don't even think we can ever forgive. It changes us, and we're never the same. It's the true essence of Christianity. Now I want you to take a look at Acts 9:19 again. Saul spent several days with the disciples in Damascus, and at once he began to preach in the synagogues. This is the very places he went to go collect new believers. He went and asked for authority from each one of them to get behind them and find the Christians. This is where he was heading. And he was preaching that Jesus is the Son of God. All those that heard him were astonished and asked, "Isn't he the man who raised havoc in Jerusalem among those who call on his name?" That man was so changed that he went into the very synagogue that he was asking for help and authority from to collect, that he is now preaching Jesus' name. That is how changed he was. This wasn't this subtle, I'll try to quit cussing, and I'll try to quit drinking, and maybe I'll quit womanizing, or maybe I'll quit lying to my husband. I'll change. I'm working on it. Now this was a rip you out of your life, turn you around, set you back down, and now you're on the road. This was God showing up. And it's evident by what Saul does. There are two things that Saul did. And I want you to examine your life when I mention these things. Because one of the things that we do, or at least I've done over the years as a pastor, is when somebody accepts Christ, I encourage them to go and speak of their new faith. To go find people they know and share with them that they've been changed. And the reason why. Because it gets them active immediately into proclaiming who Jesus is for them, and really being able to express and share how God has changed them. Saul begins to preach in Damascus. Can you imagine the place where he persecuted Christians, and now he's going to go in there and go, "Hey guys, changed my mind. Jesus Christ is really the Lord, and I'm going to preach it. This is the way it is." I don't know about you, but I'd be like, "Get me out of town. I don't want to be embarrassed, It's kind of embarrassing. Kind of embarrassing to suddenly change course. You were powerful, and suddenly now everybody doesn't like you. Everybody doesn't like you. Think about it. Do you think everybody liked Saul suddenly? All the Christians? What were they thinking? I don't know. It's a little trickery. You could be up to something. We're good manipulators at times as human beings. So don't think that back then they didn't do the same thing. So what's Saul doing? And the Jews are going, "What? Wait a minute. What are you doing? Have you been drinking too much wine? Maybe you need to go back to sleep and wake up and try this over." But there's a shame behind it as well. Because that man has to humble himself to the point of saying, "I was wrong. God has changed my life, and it's not about me. I'm allowing God to do what he wants in my life. It is about him." There's something drastically different. And Paul was raising his voice for Christ in the very synagogues he asked authority from. And then Paul did something else for Saul. He left Damascus. He went to Arabia. Think about it out Galatians chapter 1. Galatians chapter 1, verse 13. "For you have heard my previous way of life in Judaism, how intensely I persecuted the church of God and tried to destroy it. I was advancing in Judaism beyond many Jews of my own age and was extremely zealous for the tradition of my fathers. But when God, who set me apart from birth and called me by his grace, was pleased to reveal his Son in me, so that I might preach him among the Gentiles, I did not consult any man. Nor did I go up to Jerusalem to see those who were apostles before I was, but I went immediately into Arabia and later returned to Damascus." There's something big when we turn our lives and we become believers in the faith, is that not only did Saul preach and proclaim and declare his faith in God, but he does the very next thing that is important in our faith, and that is he dove into the Word and into a relationship with God. He went away. He went to a place where he's not really well known, and he went to a place he spent nothing but time with God. He came back into Damascus and began to preach again and dive into his ministry. There's something very huge about that because he left to be alone and to deepen that relationship. And you know what? I believe that for us, there's something very different. Back then, this was a radical shift. But in here, we have this understanding that Christianity's always been around. We've grown up in the church. For some of you in here, you were sucking your thumb when you came to church because you were that little. And now you're an adult and you might be grandparents and you've been here a long time. And you kind of go, well, I'm a Christian. I accepted Christ when I went to camp and kind of always known him. You understand that complete shift, that complete 180 to me, that just has to be, for me, it's amazing. I accepted Christ when I was 17, but my growing up years, I always knew there was a God, and we prayed at very special, dinners like Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter. But that was it. I said my goodnight prayers. Lord, I now lie me to sleep. That canned prayer. Can't you remember it? I can't believe it. That was the same prayer I did growing up as a little child. Went to church probably like that many times growing up. But when I came to know the Lord at 17, I was like, that was a shift for me. But it wasn't leaving Judaism, the religious staple of the day. I didn't just get ripped out of everything I've ever known, my life, everything, and completely shifted 180 and completely changed. It was not that different. Did I go deeper into what I believed was God? Yeah. So it was a lot more gentle. But there's something that I wonder that concerns me about the church is when we have that gentle shift, do we ever shift enough in our relationship with God to go deeper in our faith with him? In such a way that we begin to proclaim him in our lives and note how he changed our lives. Because for some of you in here, I'm afraid that maybe, just maybe, and don't be offended, please, I just want you to examine it. Maybe that little shift wasn't drastic enough for you to feel the importance of proclaiming the faith in God, to share that with people in your lives. I just wonder if it was. Because if it's not, maybe that's something you need to do. And for some of us that have grown in and shifted over, we also may not have gone away in our lives, or maybe put away technology long enough. Put away the TV, put away all the extra stuff just to take up God's word and learn how precious the Holy Word is and what it means for us. And then to come out of that time that you spend in that relationship building with God and proclaiming and sharing and preaching and serving in ways that shows that God has done something in you. It wasn't just this, I've always been a Christian, Now, I'm not saying all of you got to leave here, get biker vests, buy a Harley, do some drinking and running around, and then you can understand the shift. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, do you allow God to change you in a way that brings your voice to declare him, and out of a deeper desire to know him more, push off all the stuff that blocks you from him, so you can just simply learn more of him. Spend time in his presence. Spend time talking with him. Because I know for my own life, I want to be that Ananias. I want to know his voice all the way through. I want to hear him when he speaks to me. I want to know when he calls my name, I can say, yes, Lord. I want to know that when I'm on a road by myself, that I can hear him. I want to know in the middle of my work day when somebody's hurting, I can hear the voice that says, take the time. I want to hear that voice, but I know in order to hear that voice, I need to have that relationship that God desires for me, that transforms my faith. God wants to transform our faith to go much deeper than what it is now. I'm fully convinced of that. We will never be too deep in our faith. We will never reach the true depths of our faith because we're human. But I always want to try all the way to my dying day. There's a guy, I'll leave you with this remark, that I heard him speak, great youth pastor, great pastor. And he said, you know, when I die, if I'm speaking, I want to hold on to that mic stand as I'm sliding to the floor. Go, what a ride, God, what a ride. And you know, ever since I've heard that, I thought, man, that's true. Don't you want to be able to say in your faith, as you're dying, God, what a ride that was. I'm coming home.